Welcome to Chaos Divided, your weekly dose of WholesomeHammer, where we explore the hobby, the game, and the lore of Warhammer 40k. We're your hosts, Nurgle Snurgle and Blushing Noise Marine. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to give us a follow. And this week, we're talking about staying positive, having fun no matter what, and how to be a great opponent. Now, for this week's quote, I'm going to be honest with y'all. It's a Space Marine quote.
I know. I shuddered for everybody.
The cringe is in my heart too, but I feel like it fits.
Mm-hmm.
It's from High Chaplain Astarath of the Blood Angels. Treat them with honor, my brothers, not because they will bring us victory this day, but because their fate will one day be ours. Talking about the Death Company, and it's from the 5th edition Blood Angels Codex, and I feel like it kind of gets close to what we're talking about, because you know what? Even though we don't always experience victory, we can still treat our opponent honorably and be excited with them and know that someday our fates might be different. So it kind of fits. It kind of fits. It works a little bit.
we're there. We'll squeeze something in there.
So, yeah.
So everybody loses, eh?
Everybody does lose. And I think that's really, we're coming out of the post-data slate. We've had a few months of 10th. I feel like 10th has been contentious. And I think we've talked about a lot of this stuff before, kind of early on in some of the episodes, about being positive and loving your games. And I think this is really just kind of a revisiting of some of that, because it's been rough for some folks lately on both ends. There's been maybe some domination on some ends, and there's just been some absolutely no hope on the other, and that doesn't feel good. So I think what we're kind of talking about today is playing your games in a way that it's still fun, because everybody does lose some games.
Because I would say I really am enjoying the 10th edition mechanics, like the core of it, like the drawing of the secondaries and the randomness of that. I think the games I have been really fun and slightly thematic at that.
I think they got a lot right with 10th, and I think even talking about drawing secondaries, I think 10th's secondary cards are better than Tempest of War was. I think it's a refinement of that system. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff happening. I think list building now is far more thematic and also nuanced in a way, because it's not persnickety. It's not do I put this particular gun on? This piece of war gear is 10 points. That piece of war gear is 5 points. Which one can I fit in? What is it gonna, it's not as in the weeds, so you're able to just be hey, let's make a cool list that does fun things.
And you're not spending as much time list building as well. So
no,
more
we
time
can
to
talk about if you're maybe a recreational list builder and Games Workshop made that a little pay to win change to your app, then it's a little sad, but we're focusing on the positive today.
What's a recreational list builder?
You never just sit down and you're
never.
I got an idea.
Well,
just,
maybe a Nurgling Riot type of thing, but
see, that's fun.
I wouldn't say it's
you might never even play these lists. I have a list built around a Chaos Knight Rampager as the central point of a CSM list that I don't have that model. I'm never gonna play that list until I get that model. But it was a fun thought experiment that I was sitting watching TV just how would that work? I find that somewhat relaxing. You're no.
I paint minis.
See, I find painting stressful.
Yeah, see? I think our ideas of fun are just a little opposite.
You know what? Actually, I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up, but I got a package from Games Workshop yesterday. I did.
James gave you a package?
Well, I'll always accept packages from James.
What was it?
I got the Warp Forged box. So the
Okay.
2 Obliterators and the Venom Crawler.
Oh.
And a Sorcerer and Terminator plate. Now, I've said before, I don't have a pile of
Wow.
shame. Guess what?
You got a pile of shame now? It starts
It's
with
all
what?
built. It's all
Oh.
built. Yesterday afternoon, I built it. It came in the morning. It was built by the afternoon.
No shame. No shame in
No
your
shame.
house.
I gotta paint it. I gotta paint it still. But
I should
she
show
built.
you our shame piles.
They're not shame. They're piles of opportunity.
Lots
But
of
this is also
opportunity.
I like building. I actually like putting the miniatures together.
Yeah.
So
You are my yin to my yang. I'll paint and not build lists. And you.
But see, that's the exciting. You're like, oh, these are new models that I can put on the table, so I have to have them built right away. Like, what if I find a game in the next few days and I'm like, oh, I would have loved to use these new things, but they're on sprues. No, you at least build them.
Yeah, but there's, oh, I like this idea, and then the next day you're like, man, I got a great idea, and then the day after that you go. You go to like a Monster Comics and you're like, oh man, these bits, I could use this for something. And then the day after that, it's like, oh, you just won more like I've won minis, like a combat patrol, and it just came into my lap. Now I won another thing, and then I'm with a blood god who has many minis as well, and it just grows from there.
I just keep building them. Actually, you know what is one of those like moments of satisfaction? The Warpforge box comes with no additional bits.
Oh my goodness!
It's a clean sprue at the end.
See, but I like bits. I like.
No, and I normally do too. But you know, it was a little satisfying that
you know what
every piece got used, and I get to throw that sprue out. I don't have to do anything else with it. It just goes in the garbage.
But you can keep it, and you can use that sprue for.
I have 15-year-old sprue in this
wow.
house. I don't need more. It's so old. It's a different type of plastic.
You know what? I just had a thought. All the bits, they're like piles of puzzles. Because like, especially if you like the kit bash, you'd be like, oh, that's a cool piece and that's a neat piece, and you put it together like a puzzle. So.
Absolutely. But Warpforged, no puzzle pieces. Just happens.
You're lost.
And Obliterators are cool models. I'm gonna say it.
They are.
Anyways, to talk about, what are we talking about? Being a great opponent. We're way off track already.
Yeah. Doesn't take long.
I think, yeah, the thing that's important, no matter what you're trying to do with a game, whether it's competitive, narrative, just casual, whatever, what's important is that you and your opponent both have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an easy thing to like agree to. And I think it's also important to remember, and we've talked about this before, but nobody is a professional Warhammer player. You're not playing for like your livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
If you win or lose the game, you're still gonna go home at night. You're still gonna have a roof over your head. This is for fun.
Do you think it'll ever get professional?
It's so boring to watch. Like, you look at like what like professional content creators have had to do to make a battle report interesting, and then you also think of like how niche Warhammer is.
Laura,
like
I did it for 2 years. Every
like,
Sunday, 2 games. That's almost 9 hours.
Why did you do 2? Why?
We were there anyways. Why not?
I guess your commitment to the cause. I don't know. It would be a lot to like. You would need so many fans.
Mm-hmm.
Because realistically, who watches battle reports? People who also want to play the game and are using it as like either entertainment or to learn something or to get better.
The fans can be in the crowd painting. Just like those stations.
If you say this too loud, Games Workshop's gonna figure out that they're gonna have like
a Warhammer
painting,
stadium,
like counters with people playing like battle reports. They'll be like, "Wait, how many miniatures would we sell?" Your ticket comes with like credit to buy models.
It's always a space marine.
A Space Marine lieutenant
Yeah.
in some type of armor that I don't know any of the differences between.
Yeah.
You know what? Send us in a comment. You know, I'm gonna make it the question for this episode. What is the difference between any of the Space Marine armors? If you can tell me the difference between Phobos or Gravis or Centurion or whatever scout armor, I don't know. There's like 15 types of armor. Don't know the difference between any of them, and I don't know if anyone does.
Well, this one has a vent, and then this one has different bolts.
What's the difference between an intercessor and an assault intercessor? Are they not the same thing?
Space Marines say no.
Anyways, another tangent.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that you can find the fun in a game is to be excited when cool things happen. It doesn't have to necessarily be your cool thing. I mean, everyone gets excited when the cool thing that they thought of on their list or the big wombo combo goes off. But also join in when your opponent has those moments. Because realistically, you're also playing this game to just see fun interactions. Like, you know, part of Warhammer is like seeing the cool things that someone else has also thought of. So even if it like puts you in a position where you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna have to work a lot harder to like win this game, this is like devastating to me, but it's really well pulled off, or it's cool, you know, except the incarn sucks. But other than that, it's okay to be a little salty about the incarn. I think that's always a little feels bad. I'm kidding.
Can I ask a question? It kind of goes with all of that. How do you feel when people blame the dice?
I don't think that's fair.
Because I thought about game. Well, yeah, and I thought about when you said celebrate with your opponent during those times. Try not to take away from your opponent during those times by blaming your dice or commenting like how powerful their dice are, or like, oh, those dice must be weighted. Like, don't take it away from your opponent.
Because when you roll the Yahtzee of sixes to like make all of your saves, you're gonna be pumped.
Yes, yeah.
And it's gonna like your opponent's gonna be like, what just happened? And like I've what was it? I needed to make, I think, 4 sixes. Made all of them.
Wow.
And it was just one of those, just like, completely changed the game. It's just one of those like little moments where like the dice, you know, told that story. Yeah. And yeah, I don't think blaming the dice, like, it's one thing to be like, oh man, you know, my dice were not hot today.
Yeah, like it's okay to be shocking. It. Yeah, be shocked by it, but don't like, oh, I'm gonna throw my dice out, or like. Yeah, or you can be like a little goofy, like, well, you can punish your dice later.
Yeah, you can put them in dice jail or something. Yeah. But like, yeah, don't insult your opponent and say like, oh, you rolled hot, that's why you won.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Or like, I rolled bad, that's why I lost. Like, you know.
Yeah.
The dice are gonna like do what the dice are gonna do, but that's also part of the strategy. Like, if you're relying on some, like, absolutely outlier rolls, like, yeah, we've all had those moments where you just, like, roll 7 ones in, like, 12 dice somehow, and you're just like, wow, this is gonna end badly now. But, like, you kind of just, like, that's also a possibility.
It is. I have rolled 7 ones in a row on live stream, and it was the most glorious thing I've ever seen. And everyone's just like, how?
It's technically possible.
Yep. And I've seen it, and I lived it, and I was like, oh, so this is the dice game. Yep, okay.
Yeah.
You can't control it.
No. But yeah, don't like diminish yourself or your opponent by blaming the dice. Yeah, I think that's very fair. And yeah, I think like, you know, finding the moments of fun amongst the dice, amongst like what's going on, is going to change it so that like the outcome is somewhat irrelevant to like the joy you get out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, everybody loves those like victories, and it sucks to lose. But like, if you had a great time and you still lose,
Yeah.
you still win. You
Yeah.
had a great game.
Exactly. And I've heard it said a couple times, especially about Scary, and how when you play Scary, you're having a great time. Like, you're having a great game, even though you're losing. Like, I've lost against Scary twice now, but every single time I've had the most. Well, actually, sorry, 3 times. I've lost 3 times, but every single time I've had a blast. I remember them. I remember the stories. I remember the feeling I got from Scary of like, we're in this together. It's not just you versus me. It's like, we are playing this game and let's just have a good time and play.
And yeah, I think like, not everyone's going to get an opportunity to play against Scary, but be
No.
the Scary in your local scene.
Exactly.
And I think that's really where, I always find it sad when you hear somebody say like, oh, this city has a really like toxic community, or like, it's all just like competitive players, and and it gets old, or everyone just wants to win. Like, I feel sad when I hear that, because you can be competitive and you can be, somebody who's looking to play at their best without being somebody who's looking to always win.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think Scary is a great example of someone who is also an absolutely fantastic player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I don't think anyone would begrudge and say, like, oh, Scary is,
he's fun, but he doesn't get his rules right.
Yeah, like, he's a top-notch player who also is having fun, and his opponent is having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, like, in my mind, that is a peak player, is somebody who can, like, have a joyful, fun game and also, like, do well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the goal of a competitive player, is to be a great opponent, a great player, like, at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And we're lucky to have someone like that we can have like a beacon of like, that's a good goal to have.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you watch some of the like more entertaining battle report like creators out there, like, I think a lot of them really try to showcase that like excitement and the fun. Like, when your opponent blows up your tank and it takes out some of your units, yeah, like, tactically you're like, oh, that's sad, but also it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
When stuff one of my favorite games, this was in 9th edition, and in 9th edition, all Tau vehicles exploded with D6 mortal wounds. And it was myself playing Tau, and my opponent was playing Tau. And we both had a bunch of hammerhead railguns, and we just took turns blowing up each other's vehicles, and I think 5 of the 6 of them exploded.
Wow.
It was like, I think by the end of it, like, it was like almost 40 mortal wounds I did to myself, and almost like 30 mortal wounds he did to himself.
Hilarious.
And like, it was just an absolutely ridiculous game. It shouldn't have happened. It's one of those like, what are the odds moments? But it was also hilarious and like super memorable.
Yeah, exactly.
And like 100%. My explosions went off worse for me than the explosions went off for him. I didn't care. It was so much fun.
You're like, good. Make it worse.
It was like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, you have to make the best out of the game afterwards. But like, you couldn't have asked for that. Like, you couldn't have predicted that was what was going to happen. And that was where the randomness and excitement of Warhammer came out.
Yeah, you didn't come to the table and be like, well, I'm going to blow up all over myself, and that's my goal.
I'm going to deploy as tightly as possible so that all of my tanks exploding absolutely like rips me off the table. That was not the plan.
Did you play the next game spread out?
Definitely a little more. I actually was fairly spread out, but there was a hammerhead and a devilfish around each of the like blobs I had. So it was like, even though there wasn't one big clumping where one took it out, that's why like they multiply took out a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, it was because I am aware. Like, I've been playing Tau for a long time. Tau explode. That is like a thing they do. Earlier codex actually used to talk a little bit more about that, about how they use like such high energy engines that's why they were like so explosive.
Okay.
Yeah, so like,
and wouldn't you want to be explosive as Tau? Because if someone was to get too close, then you'd want to explode on them and suicide yourself out.
it is a very valid tactic to throw devilfish at your enemy in order for them to charge on the off chance they explode.
Yeah, okay.
That is a totally valid tactic. Yeah, because I mean, in prior editions, explosions worked differently. They were actually a little bit. They were both less. They were more predictable when they were going to happen.
Okay.
Because it was based on the like how damage was applied. So the way vehicles used to work is there was armor facing. So if you rolled high enough, then you would have either a glancing or penetrating. And if you got a penetrating hit, you got +1 on the vehicle damage chart. So you would roll a d6, and then if you had high enough AP, you would also get another +1.
Jesus.
So something like a railgun made things explode on a 4+.
Oh, I see.
If you got a penetrating hit. Whereas if you had a glancing hit, it was like a -1. So it was less likely to cause an explosion. So there was like, explosions were more like predictable. So if you were like, oh, I'm going to throw like this devilfish in front of a bunch of melta-guns, like, yeah. It was probably going to explode because the melta-guns had like AP1 or AP0, so they got +1 on it. So it was just like, yeah, fun times. It's also skimmers would crash. That was another thing. So you could like, anyways, old editions were far sillier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, we were kind of just talking about the like, being a competitive player doesn't mean that like you have to be super intense. You can still have fun. And I think I'm going to steal a phrase from Play On, that dice do tell stories. And like, it tells stories even in a competitive game. And I think finding the narrative moments in your competitive games will make your games more fun. Like, I think recently to a game playing into orcs, had a squad of legionaries just like absolutely do some work on some of the squig rider boys, the orcs that ride squigs with like spears.
Okay, yeah.
They absolutely tore them apart, which was super surprising. It was one of those just like, really? That's okay. It was one of those like, I thought I'd throw them in, kill a couple, and then they would just like rip my squad apart, and they did not. So it was like, oh, that's super cool.
They survive? Right. Okay.
Yeah. They not only survived, but they like killed you? Alright. That's unexpected. But that's fun. And like, it was kind of this cool little narrative of like a bunch of little just like legionaries with chainsaws just like like, I don't know. It was silly. And like, you know, it doesn't matter like what that situation is. Like, if your opponent does something ridiculous, like, we've all had those moments where you declare the 12-inch long bomb charge, and then you actually make it happen.
You're like, whoa, what?
I did it with a Tau commander once in 9th edition when you can make them melee. It was one of those just like, you know, I'm going to declare this. This is not going to happen. Did this like big 12-inch charge, got in, and just like, I think he had the fist and the flamer, so he just had like a bucket of attacks, and he like ripped a bunch of stuff apart, and it was just like, oh, that was completely unexpected. And like ridiculous that just this like crisis commander just like looks over and just like jetpacks like halfway across the battlefield.
Guys, I got this.
Like, just like out, like Donkey Kong smashes into like, you know, I don't even remember what my opponent was doing, but it was like a ridiculous, just like, oh, those are 2 6s. I guess I made that. All right. You know, it's fun. How do you feel about like, you know, what are some of your more memorable games where like your opponent really, I know you've played Scary, so you've had those experiences, but like any others that you can think of where like, you know, even though the game might not have been going in your favor, it really like turned it around?
Well, It also depends on the setting as well. Like events are going to be a little bit different. Um, I think a memorable one was with Tyler from Basement Wargaming at one of the events. I hadn't really played with him at an event, and I was playing Chaos Undivided, and this was when Tyranids were really tough as well. Like they're at the height of the of ninth, and I was able to get the first turn charge on him with the bloodletters.
Ooh, oh.
Be'lakor lifted up the bloodletters, and they were right in his face, and he was shocked by that because he has never played a game like that before. Now, I did lose entirely, but it was fun to play with my opponent in that way because like in the sense that yes, Tyranids were the height. It would be like playing Eldar and putting them on their back foot right now. It's just like it creates for like an intense moment that as opponents we're now head to head. Like I really love those types of games where we're like now thinking of what we can do next. It's like a game of chess. Like when you can kind of get into each other's minds, like, oh, what's your next play? I really, really do enjoy that. And so it was fun to just like try to play a mind game with each other, I guess. And then, like when I was able to see a little bit of like his plan didn't quite work, it was like almost cracking the code, but it didn't work out in my favor because I just wasn't that it wasn't that methodical. But that's in like a tournament setting, so I really enjoyed it in that. But narratively or like fun games, I've had them on stream, I've had them at the deck box. My games with you are always memorable. I will always remember you giving me a second chance with Be'lakor, and he just died.
That was that was also very memorable. You know what though? I would say all of our games have been memorable. Mm-hmm. I always learned something from our games, and I think you always like the way you play is very different. Mm-hmm. And you know what I would say? You know what? Credit where credit's due. I think you do play very methodically.
I do. I kind of realized that about myself through playing the games. Like, I didn't play a lot of chess growing up or anything like that, but I love games. I love playing with my opponent, and I think that's a thing to also discuss. Is like when you are as an opponent, like you don't have to just be fake and like be overly cheery for the person just to have them feel comfortable. I think you can also approach this game like I was just saying, like, okay, we're gonna play a game, and this is gonna be a push and pull type of scenario, and we're gonna make each other think, and I like that.
Yeah, I think like, you know, when I'm saying like be excited, it's not like you don't have to be like a cheerleader, like rah this boomba. Like it's more so just like, you know, take a moment to like enjoy those moments when it's cool.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be like, oh, that was so great. I didn't think that. Like, it can just be like, oh, that was cool, and then like you move on.
Or even like have like a respect approach to it. Like, wow, that was actually an amazing play. Was not thinking about that. Did not anticipate that. That was brilliantly done. I applaud you for that.
Yeah, credit where credit's due.
Exactly.
Because yeah, I think the psychological aspect of like, you know, Warhammer, I think is where a lot of play actually does happen. Is in that like, you know, making your opponent make decisions and like forcing them to rethink what they wanted to do. Like if you're both playing solitary, you're probably playing the game like not at its maximum potential. And part of that is a little bit of like back and forth, and like, you know, being a good opponent is also respecting your opponent and giving them a good game. Yeah. And not like I was actually talking to somebody recently about this because they're a phenomenal player. and they very quickly become a phenomenal player. And now they're starting to help other people get into the
Oh,
hobby and get
amazing.
into the game. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking a little bit about like, you don't want to like when somebody's newer, you don't want to necessarily go in and stomp their face.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't want to disrespect them and not play at your best. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's ways of like, do you bring a softer list? Usually,
Yeah.
yeah. You don't want to bring like a bleeding edge meta list to like somebody's first game.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't like underplay because that's also not how they learn.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's also not being a good opponent because you're not giving the other person at the table the opportunity to actually like grow and learn and become better themselves.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was kind of like what I was saying. Like the games will always depend on the scenario and the environment on how you approach it.
But there's always an opportunity to like, I think, grow as a person and
Mm-hmm.
be, gracious when you win, gracious when you lose. And not necessarily like, I think one of my first games when I came back, um, I came to the table and I was like, oh, like I'm gonna lose this game. It was somebody who I knew was much better than me,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, oh, like he's like, it always like sucks when you cry. I was like, no, 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 like I'm here for the experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to play some Warhammer. I'm just like acknowledging like
Yeah.
I'm gonna get crushed, but I'm gonna do it with a smile on my face because like
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with your army. I was
Yeah.
like so new, and I was like, I know I'm about to get stomped, but it's gonna be a fun stomping. And he
Mm-hmm.
was just like, oh, okay. Like usually people get all like mopey, and I was like, no, I'm not
Mm-mm.
here to mope. I'm just like, I was like, I'm gonna acknowledge like you're gonna stomp my face, and I'm telling you that it's okay.
Yeah.
Like don't like underplay, but also like because it was also a tournament, like you're there to also to get VPs.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, it's
and
also
it
like
ended up being a fun game.
it's also the experience of like this person is fantastic at the game. I want to experience what a stomping's like. So
Yeah,
I know what you mean. Like with say Jonathan, the fantastic player out here in Halifax. I got paired with him, and I knew I was like, okay, I'm losing this because I don't know. Like he's thinking at a whole different level, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna still play the way I'm gonna play, but I want to see how bad the stomping is, and I had an inkling. I was like, maybe I got it. And then he just stopped me. I was like, oh, that's what it's like. Okay. Okay, good game.
well, and I've even like actually playing Jonathan. I've had games where I was 100% convinced that he was going to stomp me, and then like I made him think enough that his plan unraveled a bit, and then we actually ended up having a nice like I still lost,
Hmm.
but it was much closer than I was expecting, and that's one of those like, oh, okay, there is like I learned a ton in that game.
Yeah.
And like I probably played at my best because I was going in like I've got to figure this out and I've got to like put him on the back foot and I've got to do as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And like again, it didn't lead to a win, but it led to a great game.
There's always something that you can learn from every single game. Like look at it just like chess. One person's gonna win, one person's gonna lose. And um but you'll learn in through the mistakes, through and like a close game is still a close game. It's not a like a solid loss either.
It's true. Like yeah, just because you have the L doesn't mean you didn't play a great game.
Exactly.
And I think you know what I will because I've had moments where I'm a little salty after a loss, and it doesn't feel great because you feel like you played your heart out and it just didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think it's okay to also like be honest with your opponent and be like, hey, you know what? This is like hitting me pretty hard. And like it's not your fault. This is about me. Like I'm feeling bad about this. Like
Mm-hmm.
you played a great game. Like, and just, you know, give them some room to be like, hey, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna be like I need a few moments to like get over this because I like really thought I had it and I just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like and because again, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have those moments where like, yeah, it does sting and like that's okay.
What do you think is the best course of action when you are feeling that way? Do you think it's good to like yes tell your opponent, but do you now like speed things up or what's the next step?
Like after a game, or like
Or
if you realize it in the middle of a game?
and you just told your opponent that, you know what, I'm not, I feel awful about this whole thing.
I think you still like, it depends on how, like if you get tabled turn 2 or something,
Mm.
and you're like, you know what, we can just math this out because you just need to kind of get yourself away from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to say that, like, hey, you know what, I got one squad on the table at this point, and you've got your whole army. Like, I'm okay to, like, if you want to draw your
Yeah.
cards and like,
I don't want to move these dudes for 60 more
yeah,
minutes.
like I'd rather like go and deal with my head right now so that I'm
Yeah.
ready for the
Hey, you
next
want to go get
round or
lunch?
whatever. Yeah. Like, I think it's totally fair to be like, hey, you know what, like, um yeah, like you're not necessarily conceding, you're just like, you're acknowledging that they
Mm-hmm.
have won the game, and like you're not necessarily being like, rah, I'm gonna concede so you get exploit. Like, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
let's figure it out. Like, what would you get? Like, you're gonna score this many points. Like, somebody tables your turn 2, they're probably gonna get 100.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's very fair to just be like, hey, you know what, like, you got me, you
So
win.
yeah, so that's some good advice for people out there, that if you feel like, there's no sense in continuously playing, that you can talk to your opponent.
But I would also say, like, don't, like, that's for like extreme scenarios.
Yeah.
Like, don't, right, just because you had one
Yeah,
bad
if you
turn,
lose one unit and you're like, well, there goes my game plan. I'm done,
right?
guys.
Like, just because you lost, like, your big shiny like wombo combo,
Yeah.
like, that happens,
Or the
and
new
like,
model syndrome.
yeah, you're like, oh, I really thought that was gonna do more, and you're like,
I didn't even get to
yeah, it
shoot with
didn't,
him.
right? Like, that's not a like, all right, let's figure this out. It's like, okay, I mean, like, there's no hope.
Yeah.
Like, you actually don't have the resources to score anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's fair. But yeah, if it's just like, wow, I didn't make any of my charges, and I'm just gonna get like lambasted next turn, you might not. You don't know.
Yeah.
So like, no, I would say like, it takes a little bit of nuance maybe to appreciate like when it's okay to be like, all right, this isn't gonna happen, versus just like, oh, that sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But you can like still have a game of it. You might not win, but you still have a good game.
Exactly. Yeah. Not until like
So
the king is on his own, just
yeah,
running
well, and
around.
that's fair, because like in chess, like check and checkmate are very defined.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas like in Warhammer, you don't have those like, okay, I'm in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no check in Warhammer. There's just, oh, that's bad. Oh no.
Oh no, 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 no.
But that's part of what I think makes like wargaming unique and fun versus chess, is the variability.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, you can play a perfect game and lose, and you can play a terrible game and win,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and you as the same person.
Yeah.
Like, you can like, with the same army, just like completely misplay and complete, or like play at absolute perfection, and just like the dice are just like, no.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
that you blame the dice, but just like sometimes the dice don't, they're not on your side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to talk a little bit about why we're talking about this again, is I think 10th has been a little bit of a feels bad time for a lot of people.
Mm.
There's a lot of like discourse out there that's both very positive, very negative, and I think the negative is maybe quieter than some of the like hurt feelings out there.
Mm.
Because it has been very like, if you've been at the bottom of the meta, it's been very hard to win, and you've probably gone months without having a lot of victories. At the same time, if you've been playing Eldar, you've probably you walk up to the table to a defeated opponent, and you've been doing that for months.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Everything we're talking about, I think it's fair to say, like, it's hard to always be a great opponent, because you might not always feel that way. If you are playing Death Guard and you get paired into Eldar in the first round of a tournament, for the last 3 months, you knew you were going to lose that game.
Yeah.
Like, very likely.
Mm-hmm.
And it polarizes people in a way that isn't necessarily super positive. But we have a new data slate, we have new chances, and I think on both sides of the spectrum, whether you were near the bottom, near the top, this is a chance to come to it with a fresh perspective and maybe like focus more on having great games rather than like the wins and the losses right now.
Yeah. Because like the games that I spoke about earlier, they were the height of the armies of ninth. And it was the opponents and the games that actually mattered in the interaction.
Yeah. Over time, you're not going to remember if you did you make that charge versus that charge. But you're going to remember how a game makes you feel.
Exactly. And like we have these 2.5, 3 hour games. Might as well have some good feel energy.
Embrace the fun.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We're playing a game. Remember the play.
There we go. That's a good quote. Remember the play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is meant to be kind of a quicker one, so I don't actually have any more notes. Any other thoughts on, or do we have any more tangents to explore?
What's your favorite?
I just edited the last week's episode. That would have been yesterday that I did it from when we recorded this.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us 20 minutes to end that episode. There was 20 minutes of tangents before we actually ended it. So.
And I think we started this one with 8 minutes of tangents. We started. Yeah. Not saying that the ended with that. You know what one of my favorite tangents are? And I just re-listened to it the other day. Was our burger tangent. And if you listen to our live stream, we had a nice pizza tangent today.
We did.
Was it Snurgle and Pizza the Hut?
Snurgle. Well, I think you got a pizza bar.
Yes.
And
Snurgle Pizza Bar, and you didn't think I could operate it because I wouldn't get a business license.
Well, no, I didn't. Like you personally, yes, I think you're very capable of running a pizza shop. Could you run a Nurgly pizza shop? No.
Yes.
If it's. You just make everyone sick every day.
I'm stuffing all the crusts.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Well, you don't like to stuff the crust?
You know what? I'm actually not a big fan of stuffed crust.
Oh. What, you don't like... Do you like matzo sticks?
No, actually. Well, they're fine, but I would never order them on my own.
Oh. Well.
Like, if someone else is like, hey, do you want to split a thing of matzo sticks? I'd be like, sure, if that's what you want. And then, I let them eat most of them. I don't find them super great.
I'll eat your crust.
You'll eat my crust?
Mm-hmm.
My stuffed crust?
Only your stuffed crust.
Okay.
I don't like actual crust. But stuffed crust, that's a different game.
Actually, you know what? One thing that I think Americans have gotten better than we have figured out, marinara with crust is actually solid. That is a good combo.
How is that not a... I don't know.
It's not a thing here, though.
But I grew up with that. We had what was called Panago. It used to be like Panagopolis or something. But Panago pizza, you would order dips with it. So it'd be like barbecue or ranch or marinara or cheese.
We have one dip here, and it's donair sauce.
And it shouldn't be the only one.
I mean, donair sauce on crust is
good,
also pretty solid.
But you need variety.
But yeah, a little bit of if you get Pizza Hut or something, that's the only place around here that will that serves marinara.
Weird.
I do like that. It's a good combo.
It is. It's great. It's prolonging
a little bit of,
the
extra
pizza.
sauce.
Yeah, without the cheese.
Yeah, but it's because it's also not. It's a slightly different texture because it didn't get cooked in with the the cheese and everything, so it's not as oily.
Yeah.
It's more tomatoey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what are we talking about? Are we talking about pizza? Where did this... How did we get here? Why am I talking about marinara sauce?
Snurgle's Pizza Bar.
There we go. Pizza the Hut.
Yeah. And we were talking about Great and Clean One. Would he be the pizza? Or is he eating the pizza?
I think he's both. I think he's a pizza...
He's pizza eating pizza. Right. And then I said... I'd put pineapple on it because people are so disgusted by pineapple on pizza, but we agree that it's the best thing on planet Earth.
I did not say that. It's not like.
Oh.
I just said it's good. I said like I like Hawaiian pizza.
Oh.
I think it's tasty.
Sorry, I was just reading your lips and
I
got that wrong.
it is not my favorite type of pizza. It's just it is a good type of pizza. So sweet and savory, salty, it all works.
Okay.
A sweet and savory stuffed crust, good.
So what pizza do
you
order?
What I'm hearing from Stargle. You know what? As I get older, I'm a like pepperoni stan. I like a doner pizza from time to time, and like I like a Works or something. But just like a really well made, and it's so hard to get good pizza around here, but like a well made pepperoni pizza is actually like, delicious.
Is it pepperoni
Chef's
on
kiss.
top of the cheese or under?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah,
where it curls?
The steamed salami Larson's meat pizzas that Nova Scotia is like famous for, I am not here for.
Okay. Duly noted.
I'm a popped pepperoni fan. How about you? Are you an under the cheese meat fan?
The ham, yes. The ham has to touch the sauce. The bacon be on top with the pineapple and the roasted garlic.
Okay.
That's my pizza.
That's your pizza. That's your favorite pizza.
I just like Hawaiian pizza.
Wow. That's your favorite pizza though?
Yes.
Okay. No judgment. I'm just surprised.
What? I could hear the judgment.
No, it's more like, okay.
But I do like we once had, it's somewhere in Halifax, you can get, what do they call it, Detroit pan pizza, and it was a cheeseburger pizza. Oh my goodness, that was delicious. It's like cooked in a pan, so it's like the bread's nice and thick, and the ground beef and like pickles and mustard, and yeah.
Here, if you want a weird regional dish that my wife and I often make, have you ever heard of beef on a weck?
No.
It's from Rochester, New York, and it's you take like roast beef. It's similar to like a French dip, where it's like you take like shaved like roast beef with like au jus, but the weck part of it is it's a Kimmelweck bun. It's a type of like German style bun with fennel seed on it. So, but it's almost pretzel-y, the like consistency of it. You don't like, it doesn't do like a lye bath or anything, but you get this like kind of pretzel-y, crustier bun that you then like split in half, and you put your meat with some like horseradish, and then you dip that in like a nice au jus, and it is very good. And that is like, yeah, that is something my wife and I weirdly make here.
Ooh. When am I invited?
You are always invited, and I will make you beef on a weck.
I'm here for the weck.
If we have any listeners in Rochester, New York, maybe they're just like, yeah!
We're gonna go like somewhere in the States, and they're gonna pass us like a weck. Beef on a weck.
Ooh. But it's like specifically like upstate New York, like New York City. It's not popular. It's like very specifically upstate New York.
They're gonna name a weck after you.
Ooh, the blushing weck.
Yeah.
That sounds gross. That's not.
Let's do it.
That's. All right. Well, that was.
Is that a tangent enough for you?
That was a good enough tangent.
Okay,
you know what? Maybe we'll be kind. We'll have a shorter episode. I have a feeling next week's is going to be. Do we want to tease it?
We just have a special guest, and do we tease it?
I mean, the only risk is that they like pull out last minute. We can't do
Oh
it, and then we've
yeah.
teased it.
Oh, that would be a bad omen. Yeah. We have a
Yeah,
planned guest.
we do have a planned guest. And I guess
Nice.
those tend to be longer episodes, so maybe we'll have a shorter one this week, longer one next week.
Sounds.
We'll be kind.
Yes. I like
All right. Well, actually, you did want to for those who are local, you wanted to shout out. There's a GT coming up. That is one thing you did want us
Yes,
to
because we were
talk
talking
about.
about opponents, so that what we have October 14th and 15th. I think those are the
Yes,
correct dates. Geek Fest.
if you're on Best Coast Pairings, it's up now.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. So anyone who's in reasonably local that wants to attend, they absolutely should. We'll both be there. We're both signed up.
Yes, we are.
So,
Team
and did I
Chaos
also hear
Divided.
that there might be a third member of Team Chaos Divided?
Ooh. Yes. Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what he's.
Also can't confirm.
Yeah. Blood God might be there too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So, if you're reasonably local, come out. Even, you know what? If you haven't gone to a competitive event or a GT or anything, there's still a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, hope
Even
to see
like
you folks out there.
I always encourage people to stop by, have a look at the tables, have a look of like what we do, even for like 5-10 minutes. Just pop in, say hi. Everyone's
Come see some pretty models.
yeah. People are more than willing to say hi back. So
It's true. No, you know what? The more ways people get to connect, the better.
yep. And then we can build the painting community.
I mean, that's on you. I'm fully committed to being a terrible painter, so I know what I am.
You're committed. I don't know,
I'm also,
Laura.
like-
Fabadon looked pretty good.
It's all
Pretty
just
good.
the angles. You look too close, and she rough. We'll say. Fabadon looking real rough.
Okay.
Anyways, any more tangents in the hopper there? You gotta check.
Don't unleash that beast.
You know what? My suggestion for this week had been a snurgly story time, and you said no. So
Well, I guess if they want a snurgly story time, just let us know if you want that.
there we go. I mean, the question this week is going to be about Space Marine armor, so I don't know. We'll do a poll or something.
What's the difference?
We actually, you know what? We did a poll, and it came back talking about engaging with our listeners. I did a poll, and that was, would you like more episodes on either the game, the lore, or the hobby? And it came back 33% in favor of all three.
Mm-hmm.
So completely indecisive. So we'll just keep making stuff randomly.
Yeah. That's what we do.
We did have a response about my question about who is the best Primarch.
Oh.
And it is Mortarion.
Oh.
Pale King Forever.
There we go.
There you go.
Love it. See?
So
He is the best.
So yeah, if you're on Spotify, I like to put questions out there. Feel free to answer. If not, yeah, I think the episodes are slowly catching up on YouTube, so you can leave comments there. Or if not, you can always send us messages, or I don't know, tell us what y'all think. Join us on the pre-shows if you can.
We'd love
to hear from you.
Jinx.
I owe you a Pepsi. All right. Well, on that fun note, I want to thank you all for joining us. Don't forget that you can subscribe to Chaos Divided wherever you're listening from, and on Instagram and YouTube at Chaos Divided 40K. And you can find us both on social media at Nurgle_Snurgle and at Blushing Noise Marine. And until next time, bye-bye.
Ciao.